Well, hello. Hello. Well, hello, Luann. Luann just stepped into the room as we're going live here on Facebook and on YouTube for Real Life Faith, so that we have one member in the audience, and she's telling me to shush, that she is not here. I am so glad I'm not alone in the building because I heard something and it frightened me mildly, and it's all good because it's Luann, and I don't think she'll hurt me. So, welcome to Real Life Faith. And if you haven't figured out in the previous episodes, sometimes it's controlled chaos, and we do our best. And if you heard there in the beginning, I attempted to have like really cool, trendy introduction music. Didn't work. And that's the lovely thing about faith and grace. Thank you. Thank you for your grace. That screwed up tremendously, and that's okay. So, if you are new to Real Life Faith, welcome. If this is your first time, sorry if it's a bad example for your first time. May not be a good example for a little while while we figure everything out. But this is an interactive podcast, if you aren't familiar with what's going on here. And what Real Life Faith is all about is practicing the way of Jesus in everyday life, and seeing what that looks like. Now, this is a ministry of Fairview Church in Englewood, Ohio, if you aren't familiar with where Fairview is. And we are doing this process, and I've totally lost my notebook, but we are doing this process with these books called Banding Together. That is it's a discipleship process. And we wanted to take that and put that on the internet somewhere, and so we can see if we can make this available to people that otherwise are not part of our normal worship gatherings in this space on Sundays and Wednesdays and all that kind of stuff. So that's what this is all about. And if you live in the area and you would like to check out Fairview, this Easter is amazing. We are having our Sunday worship service at 9:45, not 10:45 like we normally do. If you want to come another day, that'll be at 10:45. But we are doing that at 9:45 because we are going to go do our sunrise service that morning at 7:30. And that's down in the near the Allwood side of the Englewood Metro Park. There will be an Easter egg hunt. I don't know why my technology is wanting to jump forward, but there will be an Easter egg hunt that morning. And we're going to have breakfast at 8:30. There is a Maundy Thursday service on April 2nd of this week. So that's coming up. Now, this is running live on both YouTube and Facebook at the same time. If you would like to be involved from a text perspective, I have it on my phone right here in front of me. If you would like to text in prayer requests, anything, or your thoughts on this process, if you're checking this out for the first time, that, like I said, this is an interactive process where we want you to be involved. We want you to be a part of this. And share in how you are growing through this, and the text read. We'll get to the reading here in a second. The things that we have going on in the book, and they're by date. You can follow along with the reading. So we're all reading the same thing at the same time. This will make sense here in a little bit. But if you would like to receive one of these workbooks that we're working out of, text that number, 937-265-2218, and we will get you one of those. We will send you one of those completely for free, unless you want to include a donation, pay for it. But it is free. You don't have to worry about paying for that. So what this thing is going to be about as we work through this every week, there's a process, and I talked a little bit last week. If you want to go back and watch episode 3, I kind of talked about this whole process of what this interactive podcast is going to look like. So the first question to ask, and this is not me grilling you, dear viewer. This is us working this together. And this is not me asking questions for you to like, oh my gosh, I didn't do these things. These are just questions for yourself, like how many days this week did you read the Bible? And how did you hear God speak this week? And you might share a journal entry. I'm going to share some of my thoughts that I encountered as I was reading this week. And I'll be honest, I didn't get every day this week. I did pretty good, but I didn't get every day. And so I'm just going to be honest and transparent about that. There are days where it doesn't happen. So I'm going to give you some example like journal entries and some of my thoughts that go around them. And I want to just display that for you so you see how that works and how it can work in your book when you're filling it out. So how did God speak to you this week? If you want to share a journal entry on either Facebook or YouTube, or if you want to text that in, you can do that at that 937-265-2218 number. And the last question here is, did you have any questions from your reading? Again, you can text those in. You can comment on Facebook. You can comment on our YouTube channel, and I'll receive all of those. Now, the reason for the text, if you aren't familiar, if you haven't watched a previous episode, the reason for the text message is so that not everybody wants to have their thoughts out on the internet. We get that, and that's totally cool. And if you want to share your thoughts with me, I can filter that out so other people don't know who that is, and maybe you don't want that shared at all, and I get that. But you never know who's going to learn and grow from what you share and what you present and what you see in a text. So if that's difficult, I get that. That's why we had that phone number set up. But if you want to share that on the Fairview Facebook page where this video is running live, or if this is Tuesday or Wednesday and you're just watching it, you can be interactive in that space too. Don't worry about, I wasn't there at 8:30 or 8:45. I wasn't there on time. That's okay. Everybody has different bedtimes, and we get that. So if you can't be like interactive live with it, you can still interact with the content even afterwards, and I'll be watching that. So the reading plan this week was revolving around 2 Corinthians. And each day, if in the notebook, it asks you to read a different chapter in Corinthians and a different chapter in Psalms. So I'm going to stick with Corinthians just for the sake of time and not go through the Psalms. Now, we'll see how long this goes, and we'll see how you feel about it. If you feel we want to go longer on this portion of this, let's do that. We'll do that together. So the first day of this reading week was 2 Corinthians 6. So you were supposed to read through that. And like the instructions say, is there one passage, is there one part of that like sticks out to you? Now, I just did particular verses just for the sake of keeping this pretty short. And I jumped on 2 Corinthians 6:3. We put no stumbling block in anyone's path so that our ministry will not be discredited. Now, this is one I think about quite often. This has been one of those that I've thought about over the course of my life. Like, what is it that I do? Is there anything that I do that could cause somebody to question Christianity, to question Christ, to question, is this person really a person of faith? And if this person is representing Jesus in this world, do I want to have anything to do with that? So that's something, even from when time I was pretty young, probably like 19, 20 years old, I was a little bit older than that now, but I would process that, like, are the things that I'm doing in my life something that's going to cause somebody else to go, I either want to be a part of that or I don't want to be a part of that. And in today's world, I think there's an enormous value to that. I think there's an enormous value to representing our faith well, and for people to see that our faith means something to us, and we're not going to do those things that kind of put them off the path, so to speak. So that's coming from a Christian perspective, thinking about other people who don't know Jesus yet. And am I drawing them closer to him, or am I pushing them away from Jesus? And I think that's a fair question. I think you can do that not in a guilt-ridden way, not in a way that you're hammering on yourself, but am I creating that stumbling block in somebody else's path? And that's something to put to prayer. That's something that it can genuinely be something that at the end of every day, go, did I put any stumbling blocks in anybody's way today? And if so, forgive yourself and ask forgiveness for that. And it may be something that's big enough that someday you might even want to go to somebody and say, you know what, I did this thing and I'm sorry. And boy, that's some tough stuff. That's some heavy stuff, but there's some freeing stuff in that. So going on to the next day, and like I said, I don't want to go too fast. If you want time to spend on any of this, please feel free to comment in the comments section on Facebook or on YouTube. And I hope I'm seeing the chat on YouTube. I hope I've got this formatted correctly. Give me just a minute while I address my technology stuff. There we go. So the next day, we went to Corinthians 7. And this is just something that stuck out to me in 2 Corinthians 7:16. It just kind of jumped off the page for me, and there's some personal reasons for that. And it says, I am glad I can have complete confidence in you. Have you ever had somebody like speak a kind word about you straight to your face? I don't mean behind your back. I mean straight up in your face with something encouraging. I have a couple people in my life that do that. And I am so thankful when that happens. And I try to do that for others. I try to speak those kind words. When I see somebody doing well, I try to speak that. And I don't know that it was... I don't know it was originally an intentional thing. Sometimes I just say what comes off the top of my head, and I try to respond when God prompts. And I have had a couple people in my life, like I said, that have spoken those words to me. And what that does to your being when somebody says, you know what, I see who you are. I see how you are. I see the things you do, and I believe in you. And I have confidence in you. And I would just encourage you to do that. Make that a practice. Like try that once a week for a little while, and then try it once a day for a little while, and then try it a couple times a day for a while. And look back in your life when someone really spoke an encouraging word and how it might even change the course of who you are today. And process that for a little bit. Put that to prayer and like, God, how can you do that through me? That's a fair thing to ask. So the third day of this is this past week. I can't remember the dates. I can't do that quick enough in my head. I'm not that smart. I should have put that in here. But this third day of this reading plan was 2 Corinthians 8. In verse 7 kind of popped out to me. It says, but since you excel in everything, in faith, in speech, in knowledge, in complete earnestness, and in the love we have kindled in you, see that you also excel in this grace of giving. Now, if you aren't familiar with Corinthians, the 2 Corinthian letters, those are letters from Paul to the church in Corinth. And there's a back and forth, and we don't get the other side. We don't get the letters coming to Paul. What we get are the letters going to the church in Corinth. And so he's writing to them about different things going on. If you've seen, there's a meme that floats around on Facebook right now. It says, if Paul was alive today, a lot of us would be getting letters. and the point of that is, sometimes we do have to look at who we are and what we're doing, both as Christians and as the church, and say, are we living out that life? Are we living out the life that Jesus called us to? And Paul at times was kind of calling people out and writing to them saying, man, you need to address this. You need to straighten up on this. And Paul was pretty direct, and he talks about in some of these letters about how he's kind in person, but kind of direct when he writes them. and kind of strikes different tones. And there's something to that. When you're in somebody's presence, you want to love on them. But there's also the process of accountability. And that's what Paul's doing here. He's saying, see that you also excel in the grace of giving. So probably addressing something of greed, probably addressing something in their lives that they weren't doing straight and getting done right. And so he was kind of, very kindly and lovingly, see to it that you also do these things. And that's kind of the bottom line of what he was getting at there. So the next day we went into 2 Corinthians 9, and this is the verse that just kind of pops out. It says, remember this, whoever sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and whoever sows generously will also reap generously. It's kind of common sense, and we don't have to dig too deep into that. That kind of makes sense, but it does. I think the prayer that comes after that is, Lord, am I sowing sparingly? Am I doing this sparingly, or am I doing this generously? Am I really sowing into somebody or something, or am I doing the thing I should do? And you could apply this in all sorts of ways. You could apply this at your job. You could apply this if you're involved in some community group. If you're involved in your church, are you sowing into the ministry of your church sparingly, or are you sowing into it generously? And that's a fair question. And Paul is he's kind of getting to the nitty-gritty about it, but in a good way. He's reminding them who they are and who they work for, and that they should be generous in that. So if I'm going too fast, I'm not seeing any comments, unless I need to refresh my screen. If I do apologize if I'm missing anything from anybody, and I'll double check all that. Nope, doesn't look like it. So I think we're in good shape. So the next day on the reading plan, you hit reset and everything goes crazy. That's how that works. So the next day in the reading plan took us to 2 Corinthians 10. And Paul, again, this is still part of his letter that he is writing, and he's talking to the church at Corinth, and he says, we do not dare to classify or compare ourselves with some who commend themselves. When they measure themselves by themselves and compare themselves with themselves, they are not wise. Paul was good with words, and he was an excellent thinker, and he processed well, and he understood culture and society, and he understood well what it was like to not be a Christian, because there was that time that he wasn't, and he understands what false Christianity looks like to a set of non-believing eyes, just because of who he was before his conversion process. And if I'm talking about stuff you have no idea what I'm talking about, I do apologize. We can get into that another time, or you can text me or comment about that. But Paul he had his life before he was a Christian, when he persecuted Christians, and he knew what it looked like when people were haughty, when people were proud, and when people were comparing themselves to themselves, like, well, I'm better than this guy, and I'm cooler than this guy, and I put on a better show, and I do this thing, and I look better. And that's not what he's saying we need to be doing. He's saying that comparison process is not wise. And, he's kind of calling some people out there. He's being a little bit, he's being a little bit pressing there with his opinions, and that's why we have his writings to this day, because he wrote well, he spoke well, and he got the point across. So going on to the next day, this is 2 Corinthians 11:3 that kind of popped out to me, and he's speaking honestly with the church at Corinth. And he says, but I am afraid that just as Eve was deceived by the serpent's cunning, your minds may somehow be led astray from your sincere and pure devotion to Christ. I'm going to read that again. But I am afraid that just as Eve was deceived by the serpent's cunning, your minds may somehow be led astray from your sincere and pure devotion from Christ. So do you hear the affirmation in that? He's affirming that they have a sincere and pure devotion to Christ now. And what he's concerned about is that they're going to get strung along and they're going to get pulled away from Christ. And he's affirming who they are. He's affirming their position and their place in their community as sincere and purely devoted to Christ. And he's telling them, be aware, be wary of this, that you could be led astray. It's a message for us today. Yes, he's writing this to the church at Corinth, but it's a word for us today to not allow ourselves to be deceived, to be lied to be convinced that we need to go in this direction when we really need to stay the course where we are, and not allow ourselves to be led astray from that sincere conviction of being committed to Christ. And there's an old expression that a sheep leaves a herd one nibble of grass at a time. And if you've never been around sheep, I can remember I grew up with sheep, and not with them. We were on a farm, and it made it sound like I was raised by them. But I grew up on a sheep farm, and we had at one point we probably had 20, 25 sheep. And if you watch them as they're out eating, once they put their heads down, they can't see around them very well. All they see is the ground and the grass in front of them. And if they nibble this spot, can you see my hand? I don't know if my hand's visible. But if they nibble this spot, then this grass runs out, because I don't know if you know that sheep don't bite the grass off. They rip the grass out of the ground because they don't have any top teeth. You didn't know you were getting a lesson on sheep today, but they rip the grass out of the ground. So there's a point where this part's no good anymore. So they move on to this part and they nibble that, and then they nibble that, and they nibble that, and they keep going. So I watched it happen. I sat out in the yard one time watching sheep, and they would nibble their way, and then all of a sudden they would listen. The sheep tend to make this little sound. It's like kind of in their throat, so the other sheep know where they are. It's like they kind of locate each other. And they would make that sound to each other. And at some point they would go, oh, I'm getting away from the herd because I can hear that they're getting quieter. They'd raise their heads up, they turn around, they go and look, and they'd get back into the herd. Long thing I'm getting at there is Paul was inviting us to not be deceived by anything that's going to take us away from our pure devotion to Christ. And there are plenty of things that we can allow to happen that happen very slowly over time. And we can raise our head up and look back and realize, oh my gosh, I am away from the herd. I'm away from that pure devotion to Christ. And so that's what Paul is warning us to be about there. Sorry for all the sheep talk, but I learned a lot of lessons from sheep growing up. Funny creatures, but you can learn a lot of lessons. And Jesus' words make a lot more sense when you understand sheep. So the next day, 2 Corinthians 12, this is the one that kind of makes me chuckle a little bit. A lot of biblical scholars think that Paul was incorporating a measure of sarcasm in this. And I think they're probably right. There's probably something to this, but he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. And Paul goes on, therefore I will boast all the more gladly about my weakness, so that Christ's power may rest on me. Now, is Paul really going to boast in his weakness? Probably not. That's probably a little, what do you want to call it? A little self-identity there, that he's like, I'm going to lean on my weakness. And I was in a conversation with a friend of mine this week about our weaknesses and how those are opportunities for God to work in us and through us that I think we need to pay attention to. I think we need to be aware of those times. And I don't want to say we're going to boast in our weakness, because I do think Paul is being a little bit sarcastic there, but it is something to think about. Like, if I'm weak in this area, man, that just opens up the door for God to move and to get me out of the way and let God to move through me. So that's just something, that's one of those things you can put to prayer, like, Lord, where am I weak? Where are those things that I need to realize I don't have strengths in this area, and I need you to move. I need you to work through that. I need you to do the heavy lifting there, and I'll join you in that, but it's an area that I'm weak, and I want you to move. So those were all the reading plans for this past week. I think this is episode 4, I think, and next week will be episode 5. And these, I do these live at Fairview. Coming up, there are going to be some that are going to need to be recorded in advance because we're going on vacation. But I do not want to miss the opportunity to continue this process. So if you would like to continue be in this process with us, and you don't have one of the notebooks, this is the reading plan that we will be looking at for next week. And it goes into, and I've taken a screenshot of this, and I will put this in the comments below this video at the end of all this. I'll put that in there. If you would like to have one of those workbooks, or if you just have a prayer request you want to text in, you can text into that number at 937-265-2218. And like I said, we will send you these books completely free. And I mean, you can put a little in there if you want. You can go to our website and help us to distribute these books. And they're just a wonderful tool to do this process with, and to do it with others. And I hope you will do it with us here on this podcast and be a part of this. So every week there's an agenda. We want to kind of stick to this agenda. So we have a pattern, if you will, and we'll go through this together towards the end of every podcast. So, and we call this the accountability section. This is where, now I can't hold you accountability across the internet. Accountability. I can't hold you accountable across the internet. This is kind of a self-accountability process. But the first question it asks is, how is it with your soul? How are things with your soul? And be honest with yourself. Like, if you're happy, name that. If you have some stress in your life, name that. If you are tired, name that. I mean, I would put myself in the tired group right now. It's been a busy couple weeks, and just haven't had a lot of chance to have a lot of downtime. So I would say, in my soul, I am tired right now. And I am looking forward, as a matter of fact, to hitting the bed tonight and just closing my eyes. So that's me being transparent and honest in this process. So I would just ask you to be honest in this process with yourself. And the next question here is, what are you celebrating? Name it. Name the thing you're celebrating. I have a thing I'm not going to say out loud that I'm celebrating, but it is one of those things that I just go, oh man, yes, this is happening. And I'm excited about it. The next question, where are you struggling or being tempted? I'm not going to even suggest anything here. Where are things going on in your life that you're struggling with and being tempted in? This isn't like, oh, I'm struggling to pay the bills. No, that's not the kind of struggle that it's talking about here. But what are you struggling with from a temptation perspective? Are you struggling with a bad attitude, or are you struggling with I don't know. There's any number of things you can put in there, but what is tempting you? And going back to what Paul said, where he said, if you could be pulled away, you could be deceived by the serpent's cunning, and you may be pulled away from your pure devotion from Christ. So, what are you struggling and being tempted with? And the next question here, how has the Holy Spirit been speaking to you? And I'm going through this slowly because I want you to have time to kind of think about it and kind of process this. So if you hear me get silent for a minute, it's because I'm leaving room for you to insert yours. And if you want to put it in the comments, so there's a record for yourself, you can do that. You can text that in at that 937-265-2218. You can do that. But if you want to just share that with one other person, you can text that to me. I'll join you in prayer on that. So how's the Holy Spirit been speaking to you? And kind of related to like number 3, do you have any sin to confess? Is there anything that you just need to get off your chest? Number 6 there says, have you been angry, fearful, or anxious, and why? Number 7 says, do you need to reconcile with anyone? And you may say no right now, but maybe there will be a yes later, and maybe you'll have a name to go with that. And how well are you loving those whom God has placed in your life? You know, I had an opportunity today. I was in a place where there were people who had, they all had stories, and they didn't look, none of them looked good on the surface. I'll just put it at that. It's not in a judgmental or condemning way. It's just where I was and seeing the people that were there, and I could see the stress that life had written on their faces. And it's kind of one of those places where you go, I don't want to be here. But then I was like, you know what? I love this person over here. I love this person over here. I didn't say anything. I didn't say it out loud. I mean, I didn't want to make it weird. But as I was walking past them, I was like, yes, I love this person. I love that person. And it was like, how well was I loving them in that space? Now, my love didn't take action other than my attitude. That was the part that I was tempted to go in the wrong direction with that, because I was like, oh, I don't want to be here. But I changed it. I said, the fingerprints left on their heart by their creator are the same fingerprints that are on mine left by my creator. And so these are my brothers and sisters, and they've walked a different path than I have, but I am going to love them. And I didn't have an opportunity to like interact with anybody, but I adjusted my attitude a few steps after I got out of my car and said, nope, Chris, don't be that way. These are people that you are going to love, even if it doesn't take action right now. Your attitude has to be in the right place. So kind of at the end of the podcast here, who are you praying for this week and why? And this question is there intentionally to invite you to pray for somebody. If there's not somebody that you are praying for, think of a name and let the first name that comes to your head be that person. And who are you praying would surrender their life to Jesus? And who is someone you could start a discipleship group with in the future? Yes, I said you start a discipleship group, because what would be really cool is if we take this real life faith thing and turn it into your group doing this discipleship process together. And we can get more books and we can send those. And, or maybe you just invite somebody to be a part of this podcast, or you share this with them. And please feel free. The Fairview YouTube channel and the Fairview Facebook page are both public. So if you hit the little share button, you can share that stuff. So if, like I said before, if you want to receive one of these books, you can text us at 937-265-2218. And also, if you have prayer requests that just pop up through the week, keep that number. And, this faith life was intended for us to do it together. We were intended to be on the path together. And if you don't have that, sometimes people experience hurt in the church and they want nothing to do with the church. And I get that. Been there, done that. And I found a place of people full of peace that became my church family. And if you have that experience, I want to pray for you over that. And if you have that experience to a point where you just say, I can't be a part of a church, but I can join you online on Monday evenings or anytime throughout the week. I mean, these recordings stay on our Facebook page and stay on the YouTube channel. So it's not like it's a one and done thing. If you want to interact and follow along with this and even come back later at another time and track with what's going on, you can do that. And I'm going to try to make it to where all the videos are dated so you know where it's at in the reading plan that goes along with the Banding Together workbook. And hopefully it should work out. Hopefully it should work for you to be able to do that. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, ideas, please let me know about those. Let us, we want to hear from you. So you can text us 937-265-2218. And also you can follow and like and subscribe on the YouTube channel and follow our Facebook page if you want to know more. Also an idea, Georgette, one of the amazing people here at Fairview, she sent me a list of ideas. And one of those ideas is how can we interact easier? And I'm considering a Facebook group that would be just for this, not just for this real life faith thing, but for banding together for other people here at Fairview that are going through this process, that we can all have an interactive piece. If you think that's a good idea, raise your hand. I can't see any hands, but if you hit like on the video or comment on the video, let us know if you like that idea, and we can put that together. That's fairly easy stuff. So I want to pray for us, and I want to thank you for being a part of this. Lord, just thank you for this amazing technology you've given us. And it can be easy to say that this has been created by the hand of man, but boy, you blessed it and you made it possible for us to do these things. And we give you full credit. And Lord, I just pray that you would be with us as we live out this life, as we experience those real struggles, that you provide the opportunities for real growth and help us in this process of real discipleship. Lord, I just ask that you would form our whole life. I pray that you would come in and work through us and create disciples for you, real disciples, Lord. The kind of disciples that live out the things that you taught. And we ask all these things in the name of Jesus. Amen. Thank you for being a part of episode 4. God bless.